So in this video, we're going to be talking about the end of the Republic as brought about by the man who claimed to be restoring it, the heir of Caesar, Octavian, soon to become the Emperor Augustus. So after Caesar's death, we are left with, as I said, two individuals, neither of whom was in a position to take the power of Caesar completely for themselves. Caesar was the hero of the masses and of the army. He was indisputably the master of Rome. Upon his death, Antony had the experience. Octavian had the name. He had been adopted by Caesar and so becomes Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. He has the standing as the heir of Caesar amongst the Roman people, and so Antony and Octavian essentially need each other, and so the situation had broken down enough that by this point the the civil wars have torn apart Rome, and unlike the earlier triumvirate, which was informal and behind the scenes, a smoke-filled room kind of thing, the triumvirate of 43 is officially sanctioned. These three men are granted the power to govern Rome and to restore stability and to ensure peace. On behalf officially of the Roman state and the Roman people, with the approval of the Senate. And so the triumvirate consists of Antony and Octavian, and they need a third member. The reason that they need a third member is not just because they need three people. They need a third member because the one thing that they don't have, Antony has the military experience, Octavian has the love of the people. What they don't have is control of the state religion, in order to make sure that they can do whatever they need to do within the Roman government. And so they co-opt into their triumvirate the Pontifex Maximus, the man who has is the official head of the Roman religion, otherwise completely unimportant, so much so that we don't even have a good statue of him. There's no bust of Lepidus. All that we have is this coin that was issued by one of his descendants. This essentially tells the whole story. The triumvirate is really about Antony and Octavian. They once again cement their agreement with marriage bonds. In this case, Antony marries Octavian's sister, Octavia, and they each sort of take their own responsibilities. They try to stay out of each other's way as much as possible in order to prevent the kind of falling out that had happened between Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. And so, once again, Antony goes into the east, Octavian stays in Rome, and Antony spends a great deal of time in the east, arranging the provinces, shoring up Roman rule, and building up an alliance with the king of Egypt, who is actually the queen Cleopatra. Caesar had done this very effectively, and a great deal of personal diplomacy during the last few years of his own rule, and so much so that there was a lot of talk of Cleopatra being brought to Rome as a queen of Rome, and this was part of the propaganda that was used against Caesar by Caesar's enemies. Antony picks up where Caesar left off with Cleopatra, but whereas there seems to have been an actual kind of relationship of equals between Caesar and Cleopatra, Antony, makes the mistake of, falling for Cleopatra. On the one hand, he wants to use Cleopatra as a base of operations. He wants ultimately to get rid of Octavian and become the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. And so, in the beginning, he wants to use Cleopatra, the wealth of Egypt, and the resources it can provide, in order to engineer a takeover and bring about sole rule. But he becomes closer and closer to Cleopatra, so much so that he, in the end, he actually marries her, and and adopts some of her children, including the son that she had with Julius Caesar, whose name was Caesarion. The problem with this, of course, is that Antony is still married. He is already married, and he's married to Octavian's sister, Octavia. Octavia, has the reputation in Rome of being, a paragon of virtue, the most ideal of Roman matrons, and so Antony's treatment of Octavia is demonstration of Antony's having been corrupted by the decadent East, of his own ambition for power. Octavian, uses what Antony does in the East against him to ensure that he has the support of the Romans, and starts talking about Antony wanting to set himself up as king of Egypt, wanting to move the capital, of the empire from Rome to Alexandria in Egypt. All of these things, build up toward an inevitable fallout. Cleopatra, herself seems to be primarily motivated by ensuring that Egypt remain independent. It's the last great Mediterranean power that's not ruled over by Rome, and so her effort, with Caesar and with Antony, is to do as much as possible to play these men so that they will keep her as queen of Egypt, and protect the independence of the Egyptian kingdom. In other words, that she can ensure the safety and sovereignty of her own people. And so, however, Cleopatra is depicted as a temptress, as a woman who's out for sensuality, all the things that happen in movies like Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor, blah blah blah. This is Cleopatra is first and foremost the king of Egypt, the pharaoh, and she is doing what she must for her kingdom. Cleopatra is in it for Egypt. All of this builds to the ultimate and inevitable conflict, the battle between Antony and Octavian, which is at the Battle of Actium, a naval battle. And Octavian has the benefit of of great generals on his side, as well as the support of the people in the army. Antony is fighting with foreign troops and troops from the eastern provinces. He is fighting with the Queen of Egypt at his side. Clearly this is a fight of Rome against the other in many ways, and so. The story is that during the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra realizes that Antony is losing, and she turns her ship around and sails away. And Antony, seeing that she's leaving, sails after her, and this leaves his forces, leaderless, to be surrounded and crushed by the forces of Octavian. The Battle of Actium is the end of the period in which the warlords are fighting for each other. It leaves Octavian in sole control of the Roman Empire. And the interesting thing about this is that Octavian is now in the position of needing to be the sole person that ensures the stability of Rome. The Roman Republic is thoroughly broken; it cannot function. Simple things like getting consuls elected is impossible to accomplish because of the ruination of the civil wars, because of the mistrust engendered between the people and the Senate, because of the polarization, the rancor, and the mistrust of institutions. And so the republic itself is broken. Octavian is now in the position of being the stable force in Rome, and he is is given the job by everyone concerned. Everybody turns to him from the people, the army, the Senate. They turn to him to ensure that Rome is stable and at peace. And so this is the strange way in which Rome, after 500 years of doing everything possible to prevent one person from rising above everyone else, at the end of the day, they find that they must, submit to the stabilizing force of a single ruler. And so, Octavian is now the hero. Octavian is the representative of peace, prosperity, and stability. He is the end to the civil wars because he's the last of the warlords standing. And it is with immense gratitude that the Senate and the people grant him power over Rome. The first settlement is largely cosmetic, in that this is about him gaining the title of Augustus, which has a sort of religious aspect. In other words, the title of Augustus that he picks up has an overtone of being endorsed by the gods, and the title of Princeps is a carryover from the Senate, in that the eldest, the Senate member of the Senate with the greatest tenure and the most service is called the Princeps, the first. And Octavian has now made Princeps. He's now called the first in all of Rome, and he's given the right to the Corona Curica, which is a crown that's given to somebody who saves the Roman state in a military situation. He's given annual consulship. He's given the governance of Rome and all these titles and honors along with it. But what really matters, what really establishes the Principate, which is what we're calling the office that is later referred to as the emperor's. Emperor is really a term that comes later and is applied after the fact. But what establishes the Principate, the nature of the Principate, is the second settlement, and what this consists of is being given the power associated with the office of the consul, the power and privileges of the tribune of the plebs, and the power of a censor, without actually having to hold these offices. In other words, he is invested as a man, as a private citizen. These authorities, there's no office, there is no actual official magistracy, there is no office of Princeps. It is an honor that is given to the first citizen in Rome. But there is no throne. There is no official emperorship. What this is the people of Rome turning to their most prominent citizen and asking for his help and guidance and giving him the tools to do so. But there is no official position. And this means that Augustus is governing Rome and the Roman Empire as a person, as himself, not as the holder of an office that has very specific rules and precedents and all these other things. This keeps him in office as Princeps for an extremely long period of time, because it isn't an office, because it's him, because he remains the most prominent citizen. And this means that he is, there's something about the Principate that is amongst the people, that is a break from all the things that weren't working, all the official offices and magistracies of the Republic. This is something else, and it's not the kingship either. This is the people turning to their friend and hero. Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, Imperator Augustus. What this this means, of course, that one of the principles of the of this position is keeping those constituencies happy, and from this point onward, the princeps essentially has three constituencies that must be kept supportive, or else the whole thing can break down. So he has the constituencies that he inherits from Caesar, which is to say the people and the army. But in order to be a ruler of all the Romans, he has to keep happy a third constituency, the Senate. Augustus is very adept at this, very adept at keeping the people happy, keeping the army happy, keeping the Senate happy. But, some of the people who come after him, maybe not so much. And the other thing about this is that the Principate is still vulnerable to the thing that was opened up by Marius and Sulla, the loyalty of the armies to their generals, and the governorships as breeding grounds for people with ambition, which means that the governors and the successful generals are all inherent threats to the Principate, to whoever is ruling at Rome. Augustus tries to mitigate this as much as possible by ensuring that only his own relatives are able to hold the triumph, that his governors are loyal to him personally as much as possible. But it's still, there's an increasing danger of governors and generals deciding that they want power for themselves. A lot of what prevents this during the reign of Augustus is simply the goodwill that practically everybody has toward him. And of course, that is no longer a factor after Augustus eventually dies. But everybody loves and respects Augustus, and the gratitude to him for ensuring peace in Rome, not just by ending the civil wars, but by shoring up the frontiers so that that Rome enters in a period of great prosperity and peace throughout the empire as a result of the curbing, the limitation of invasion and insurrection throughout the Roman Empire. Augustus becomes a figure of heroism and love, not just in the city of Rome, but through the provinces as well. And so, this is as much as anything about how the Principate is established. Augustus is able to rule as this powerful figure that has earned his power through what he has accomplished by bringing peace and stability and prosperity to Rome and the empire. Everybody is better off under Augustus. By the time Augustus dies, nobody even wants the Republic back. And so the main problem, therefore, is how to institutionalize this position that is not an institution. How to deal with the fact that Augustus is ruling over Rome and the Roman Empire without actually holding an office. How does that endure beyond Augustus himself? And so this is a very real problem because Augustus is certain that if he doesn't do something about this, if he doesn't make provisions for the continuation of the Principate, that everything will break down into civil war again. And a lot of other people are afraid of this as well. That if there isn't a succession, if the Principate isn't perpetuated beyond Augustus's death, that one or two or three members of the Senate and governors and all sorts of likely candidates will end up reenacting the civil wars and warlords fighting against each other and blood on the streets of Rome again. Nobody wants that. And so what ends up being the solution is for the Principate to pass as personally bequeathed, as if it were the property of an individual from the person that has it to his heir. This had already been actually sort of established as the precedent by Julius Caesar. In other words, Julius Caesar passes his popularity and the sort of clientele of the people and of the army to his great nephew Octavian, who becomes Augustus. Augustus, in turn, establishes as his adopted son and heir, Tiberius. Tiberius inherits, Augustus's property as a private citizen, and with this, the title of Augustus and the standing, the clientele that Augustus has as a person amongst the people, the army, and the Senate. Tiberius then has to demonstrate his ability to preserve stability, peace, and prosperity, and this is the process whereby it continues. Tiberius adopts as his son and heir a cousin named Gaius, who is known as Caligula. When Caligula dies, Caligula's actual uncle Claudius is made the princeps by the Praetorian Guard, by the guard whose job it was to protect the person of the emperor, and this is confirmed by the Senate. But Claudius then continues the tradition by passing on the Principate not to his own actual biological son, Britannicus, but to an adopted son and heir, Nero, and so on and so forth. And so Julius Caesar and Augustus establish the role of the princeps as being the first citizen of Rome in a very real and fundamental way, and the role that the first citizen has is passed on through the principle of adoptive succession, and this remains the primary mechanism for the ensuring of the succession throughout the Roman Empire. The nice thing about this is that unlike normal dynastic succession, where the new ruler ends up being whoever is the son of the previous ruler, whatever their faults, whether they're healthy, whether they're sane, whatever. The principle of succession allows for the existing princeps to choose someone who is worthy and someone who will be acceptable to the three constituencies. And this means that this, as a principle of succession, adoptive succession ends up actually working very well. And we'll see the first series of dynasties and how this plays out in the first couple of centuries of the Roman Empire in the next videos. For now, that's that.